Hi guys, it's Mr. Bradley here, and this is the Learn It section of our lesson today. Now, I've decided to do this via a video because, as you guys know before, with our extended question videos, the great thing about using videos is that when you're at home, you're able to access the content, and it just enables you to have a little bit more confidence as you are able to revisit the information. Also, just imagine in a few years' time, you have left Knights Templar and you're still going to be able to hear my soothing voice every day if you choose to, by being able to log in and watch this video. So this is the Learn It section, like I've already said, and we are going to be looking at the long-term effects of exercise. Now, long-term effects are basically somebody who's been doing training for a number of weeks, maybe 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, even a number of months. And it's basically the changes that are going to happen to that person's body over time. So this task is quite straightforward. You have a set of revision cards in front of you. And what I'd like you to do is you're going to use this video tutorial to help you complete a revision card based on the long-term effects that exercise has on certain body systems. Now, at any point you can press pause and rewind if you need to go back over stuff, or even fast forward stuff if you are really confident that you know the information. And like I've already said, you can access this video at home. So let's get started. Now, the exam board is very specific in the two key terms it wants you to know. First being cardiorespiratory and second being musculoskeletal. These are the two body systems that they would like you to know what happens long term as a result of doing exercise regularly. So let's look at cardiorespiratory first. The word cardio means heart, the word respiratory means respire, which obviously we're kind of thinking there about breathing and lungs. So whenever we see the word cardiorespiratory, we need to think about the following. We need to think about the heart, we need to think about veins, arteries and capillaries. That's the cardio bit, almost like cardiovascular. And then respiratory, we have the lungs, we have the diaphragm and intercostal muscles. Those are the main organs and muscles associated with that particular body system. Now, when we see the word musculoskeletal, we need to think about muscles. It's quite obvious, musculo. We see the word skeletal, so we're thinking about the skeleton, we're thinking about bones. And within that, we're also thinking about ligaments and tendons. Because don't forget, a ligament connects a bone to a bone, and a tendon connects a muscle to bone. So again, that body system will involve muscles, bones, ligaments and tendons. Okay, now although they want you to know it as cardiorespiratory, I actually find that we can actually group and split the long-term responses based on each individual body system. But when you are answering this type of question in the exam, any of these examples will be credited as a cardiorespiratory long-term effect. Okay, now on your revision card, hopefully you're going to be able to transfer lots of this information onto each card. It looks like quite a lot of text, so we're going to go one row at a time. And a little arrow will flash in to let you know which one we're looking at. So a long-term effect, let's imagine I've been going to the gym, I've been doing continuous training for 6 to 8 weeks. My heart is going to increase in size and strength. Now that's really important because if my heart is bigger, that means I can have an increased oxygen delivery as more blood is pumped per beat, which therefore means more oxygen is available for energy. Also, if my heart is stronger, each beat is going to be more forceful. So if it's more forceful, I will be able to pump more blood per beat. We then have increased capillarization. Remember, a capillary is what surrounds the alveoli, and here is where gaseous exchange occurs. So if we have more capillaries surrounding these alveoli, then obviously we are going to be able to have an increased oxygen delivery due to a larger surface area, so more oxygen is available for energy. It's quite obvious that if I have more capillaries where gaseous exchange occurs, then I'm also going to have more oxygen available. Don't forget, these capillaries also are responsible for removing carbon dioxide as well. I then have increased resting stroke volume and cardiac output. As we've already said, if our heart is bigger and stronger, more blood will be able to be pumped per beat, which means more blood can be circulated around the body, so more carbon dioxide can be removed when exercising. Now there are more cardiovascular system responses. That's card number 1. I'm going to move on to card number 2 now. On your revision card, you actually have 1 card associated with cardiovascular system, but it just seemed like quite a lot of text for me to squeeze on. So let's have a look at cardiovascular system number 2. Okay, so we've got a few more effects that could happen here. So we've got a decreased resting heart rate. So you sitting there at the moment, on average, should be around 60 to 80 beats per minute. And the better your cardiorespiratory system, the more efficient your heart is going to be. So having a decreased resting heart rate is going to allow for a greater heart rate range when exercising, which would allow an athlete to supply enough oxygen when exercising. I think that's really important, that heart rate range bit. We also have a faster recovery rate. So let's imagine before exercising, your resting heart rate is 72. Once you have finished training, a real good indication of how fit you are is how quickly you go back to that figure, that number, your resting heart rate. So the quicker that happens, the more fitter you are, like I've already said. Now the reason why, or how it helps performance, is the heart is actually a lot more efficient. It's bigger, more lactic acid can be removed, more carbon dioxide can be removed, more energy stores can be replenished, more oxygen can be used to break down lactic acid. So the efficiency of the heart has increased, which will obviously make your recovery rate a lot faster. We also have an increased number of red blood cells, and we know that red blood cells are responsible for carrying oxygen. So if we had more red blood cells, more hemoglobin, we are going to be able to exercise for longer. And don't forget, hemoglobin can also transport carbon dioxide as well. And again, that exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide happen in the capillaries, and oxygen diffuses through the alveoli. And a final one for this particular system, the cardiovascular system, is a drop in resting blood pressure. Now we know that blood pressure is the pressure that blood exerts on the walls of arteries and veins. Now what we find is the fitter we get, those arteries and veins actually have a muscular wall, and that wall becomes more elastic, and if it becomes more elastic, it's going to be more pliable and more stretchy. That's going to make you less likely to suffer from a stroke, and that's really important. Okay, so there are our kind of 7 long-term effects of exercise on the cardiovascular system. Again, don't forget, that is still part of the cardiorespiratory system. I've just tried to group it a little bit better for you. So we know that all of those changes just affect the heart, arteries, veins and capillaries. Excuse me. Okay, we now have the respiratory system, again made up of the cardiorespiratory system. Okay, we have a number of long-term effects. The first one is an increase in lung capacity or volume. So I'm going to be able to inhale and exhale more air per breath. The lungs are much more efficient, so I'm going to be able to be better at delivering oxygen and also removing carbon dioxide, which we know is a byproduct of exercise. Another long-term effect is an increased number of alveoli. Like I've already said to you before, this is where gaseous exchange takes place. And if there are more alveoli, we're going to have an increase in oxygen delivery due to a larger surface area, so more oxygen is available for energy. Don't forget, like I've already said, alveoli is also the site for where carbon dioxide is also exchanged and eventually breathed out. And finally, we get an increase in strength of the external intercostal muscles and the diaphragm. Now, these are breathing muscles that are massively associated with inhalation and exhalation. So the breathing muscles, in particular the diaphragm, will be able to completely flatten as it gets a bit stronger. This is going to allow more air into the lung space, so you're going to be able to breathe in more air which contains oxygen, which obviously is really important for energy. Those intercostal muscles, they are the muscles that line each rib, and again, if they are stronger, they are going to be able to squeeze with more force. They are going to be able to inhale and exhale more oxygen per breath. So that's the cardiorespiratory system. And again, like I said, I've just tried to group it based on each individual system. Okay, then I want us to look at the musculoskeletal system, and we know that that is made up of the muscular system and the skeletal system combined. So here are a few long-term effects for the muscular system. It's quite straightforward, this one. There is just one. Muscle becomes stronger and gets bigger. If you imagine somebody going to the gym for 6 to 8 weeks following a weight training program, you would expect to see their muscles increase in size and them to be stronger. Now this is obviously going to be really beneficial to performance, as if you are stronger, you're going to be able to apply more force. In certain events, javelin, shot put, discus, that's obviously really important, because if you can apply more force, you are going to be able to throw that javelin or shot put or discus that little bit further, and that's going to make you hopefully win your competition. Excuse me. Okay, as we know, muscular skeletal, so we've still got the skeletal system. So the skeletal system, we have two main long-term effects. Ligaments and tendons become stronger. Don't forget, a bone is connected to a bone by a ligament, and a muscle is connected to a bone via a tendon. So again, the more exercise we do, the strength of those ligaments and tendons increase. And our second long-term effect is going to be our bones become more dense. Now, as a result of our bones becoming more dense and our ligaments and tendons being stronger, this reduces the risk of an injury occurring. Now, there are certain activities which can increase someone's bone density, and these would be activities or sports where the person is supporting their own body weight. So gymnastics is a great example. Cricket is a great example. Tennis, badminton, table tennis. Any event where your weight is supported by your own body. Now there are some events which aren't very good at promoting somebody's bone density because your weight is supported by something else. So a cyclist, for example, that wouldn't be a sport which is great at increasing bone density because your weight is supported by the bike. Swimming, again, is an example of an activity which is not very good for developing bone density because your body weight is supported by the water. So we do need to be aware of certain activities that are better at increasing bone density than others. Okay, so hopefully that's the learn it section done. I just want to again be really clear that the exam board wants you to know the two body systems combined. They want you to know cardiorespiratory and they want you to know musculoskeletal. So any question that you see will be worded like that. So you've got to be prepared to make sure you use the right information. Okay, now hopefully you have a series of revision cards now based on the long-term effects. I recommend you just have a little flick through and try to get that information to stick in your head. How are you going to get it to stick? Is there any easy way of being able to revise stuff or group stuff together? Can we chunk any information? It's again, let's take this last slide for example. Both of those long-term effects help the performer in the same way. So I've tried to group it to make it a bit easier. Okay, now the learn it section is done. You guys can now move on as soon as you feel comfortable that you know. Now I now need you to move on to the consolidated section. Now what this part of the lesson involves is, now that you've learned that information, we're trying to see what you can remember. We're trying to build it into your memory. So what you have to do is you must scan this QR code that's on the screen. I guess you might find it difficult if you're using an iPad, or you could do it on your phone, or you can go to the main whiteboard in the classroom as it will be displayed on there. You need to scan it and it's going to direct you to a Google quiz. Now you cannot move on to the test it section until you have scored 100% in the quiz. For your first 3 attempts, you are not allowed to use any notes whatsoever. So it's really important that you don't move on to this section until you think you know your stuff. After the first 3 attempts, if you still haven't scored 20 out of 20, then I will then allow you to use any notes that you need. So scan it, complete the consolidation part. As soon as you've finished the consolidation part, you can then move on to the test it section. If you look up on the whiteboards, you will notice there are 3 different lots of questions: bronze, silver and gold. You can now pick one of those questions to answer, mark and correct. Always make sure you make any corrections if you do not achieve full marks. And there's also a chance just to cross-reference your revision cards to make sure you have all of the correct information. If you're not sure what you need to do, all you need to do is pop your hand up and ask. Good luck on the consolidated part.